Friends and partners, employer branding experts and experienced professionals, welcome to the Oddwork Employer Branding Talks. My name is Poyan Karimi. I am the CEO at Oddwork, and together with my friend, inspiration and colleague Daniella Ravan, we are delighted to welcome you back to the third edition of this live streamed event. Because twice a year, we do the Employer Branding Summit, an invitational event that gathers some of the most forward-thinking and progressive employer branding experts in the world digitally. And from that very format, the Employer Branding Talks have evolved. Our guests at the summit asked us for a deep dive and open for all format where we depict one employer branding subject at the time in between the two summits. And that is exactly what we're going to do here at the Employer Branding Talks. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, welcome. You do find the two previous employer branding talks on YouTube, covering both the most emerging employer branding trends for 2021 and our previous talk on adaptive cultures and how to create them, together with ห์𝗲𝗲𝗱 from Dale Carnegie. If you do have any technical issues, you can address these in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen, and the team at Oddwork will help you right away. And if you have any direct questions to our live guests, you can also pose these in the chat, and the team at Oddwork will send them to us to be answered live. And today's talk is something special, isn't it, Daniella?
It sure is. Today we're jumping into a question close to our hearts and close to my heart. We are addressing an elephant in the room, and we have invited an amazing guest on the subject. Today we will talk about a fair and equal tech industry, and it's not a day too late. Joining us in just a few minutes is Malin Frithiofsson. Malin is one of the most influential changemakers for women in tech in Europe. And for those of you who have heard her speak, you know what is waiting: hard truths and how to change them. And for those of you who haven't heard her yet, well, you are in for a treat. However, we would like to start the session today with a little exercise. And this is an exercise of consciousness. So, you probably have your phone nearby on the table in front of you or in your pocket, and feel free to have it close by, but try not to look at it for a couple of seconds. Now, close your eyes and try to see in front of you the home screen of your phone. And when you can see it, when you can visualize it, try to see in front of you which app or icon you have in the top left corner of your home screen.
And we want no peeking.
I have good faith, Poyan, that our audience have more patience than you do.
Might be so. That might be so.
Okay, now feel free to look at your phones and see if you guessed correctly. Poyan, should we see how many who got it right?
We will send out a question, a poll on the right-hand side of your screen right now, and we would like you to answer. Did you find the right app? We see answers coming in from over 200 guests attending from all over the world right now. We have yeah, it is a battle. We have a 50-50 battle right now. You should be able to see the live results also with approximately 20 answers in. It's a 52% that actually did find it. We have a 48% that didn't. Answers still coming in, but we can close it with a 50-50 battle.
Well, that's really interesting. So as we saw, some of you knew exactly what app you had in the top left corner because maybe you use it frequently. But there were also many of you who had no idea what app or icon it was, even if you probably looked at your phone 10,000 times before. Sometimes it doesn't matter how many times we stood face to face with something right in front of us, be it inequality, biases, or the home screen of your phone. Our blind spots will be there and stop us from becoming aware of them. So if you and your organization actively work to find out what your unconscious biases are, you hold the key to start building the workplace of the future. Welcome to the third Employer Branding Talk live stream from Oddwork headquarters in Gothenburg, Sweden, with Poyan joining in from London, UK. Poyan, what do you say? Are we ready to get started?
Daniella, indeed we are. And let's start here. 49.6% of the world's population are women. Did you know that women-led startups received just 2.3% of the global venture capital funding in 2020? And that is a decrease from the year before. Did you know that only around 6 to 8% of patents granted annually are credited to female researchers? Did you know that only 9% of all apps are developed by women? According to an American report produced by Accenture and Girls Who Code, women hold merely 16% of engineering roles and 27% of computing roles, while being 45% more likely to leave a tech role. In addition to that, around half of all women who take on a job in the tech industry will drop it before turning 35, compared to 1 out of 5 in other types of jobs. No organization or individual is perfect in regards to these questions. We are indeed not, and we are indeed in the beginning of our learning process. You are probably not, and very few, if any, are. What we must expect from each other, however, is consciousness. And I know personally from Oddwork's journey and from stories from our partners that many have experienced situations or moments that has raised that consciousness. If not, we do hope that today can be that moment. You cannot address employer branding and not address this problem. It is 2021 and the numbers are shockingly low. On the other hand, we know that there are proactive organizations that are addressing the question more frequently than ever before. How do we need to change to be able to attract, recruit, and retain top female talent to our organizations? This is especially true for our tech partners. Women in tech are rightfully on the rise, and we are very proud to have an expert on the subject on today's talk. Malin Frithiofsson is the president of Women in Tech Gothenburg. She is the program manager for Startup Norway. She's an author and a well-renowned speaker with the motto, always be loud on what's important. She is the 2020 Global Startup Awards winner, where she received the People's Choice Award in the Startup Ecosystem Supporter category. She speaks truths about equality, democracy, tech, and innovation, and we are very proud to welcome her to the Employer Branding Talks. Malin, welcome.
Thank you. I mean, doing these kind of gigs is really good for your self-confidence to just hear other people introduce you.
This will be recorded, so we'll send it to you afterwards, and you can repeat that intro.
Great, again I will do that and just watch my head grow.
Malin, it's so great to have you here, and let's jump into it right away. In the intro to this event, we took a look at the trailer for the Netflix movie Coded Bias, and it depicts tech design in all areas as unequal, and it's a great eye-opener. So let us ask you right away, are tech designs male by default?
That's a great question, and I would say that the world is male by default, and that trickles into tech designs. Of course, one of the biggest issue is that tech being unequal has a huge impact on everything outside of technology, because all of us are interacting with technology on our daily basis. So yeah, the world is male by default. Tech is male by default. We see that time and time again. There were some really great examples in the intro, but there are multitudes of them. And since I started talking about this, every time I talk about male design when it comes to technology, I get new examples constantly sent to me. So we have voice recognition software that still the best one works 70% better for male voices. We have car safety design, which still, even though we know this, we've known this I think the study came out 4 years ago about how women are 34% more likely to be severely injured in car accidents due to how the car is designed, and 17% more likely to die in a car accident. And still, very little has been done to actually change that. Then we have the small things. We have the annoying things like the size of an iPhone. I read a super great article by a Stanford researcher who was in Turkey, and she was trying to document some human rights violation that was going on there. And as she was being blasted by tear gas, she was trying to shield her mouth and her face, but at the same time she wanted to take pictures, but she couldn't because she couldn't hold her phone with one hand and take a picture. She was lucky that she had male coworkers there, and they could because their hands are bigger. And she wrote an article about that afterwards. Yeah, we have spacesuits.
That is
the all-female spacewalk was canceled because we don't have any small spacesuits. So we have so many of them, and constantly these are products and services not in development stage, but actually released out into the market. So you would think that they've gone through a lot of areas where someone could say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't work as well for women, or it can actually be dangerous for women. But if you don't have that perspective in the room, then these designs happen, and these designs end up on the market, basically.
Yeah. I think that we are many women here today who can relate to the cell phone issue, not being able to text with one hand. So I can totally relate myself.
And hopefully many men also that can understand the perspectives.
Definitely. And I had the first time I did this talk, I actually had a friend of mine, my then roommate. She came to me, and she's not into at all like politics or feminism or technology at all. This is stuff that I blab about, and she kind of shuts her ears. But she was like, "Yeah, I've been writing the new voice, and I can't use the new blinker system because then I have to release the brake because my hand just doesn't reach there." So she was super not excited about that, but she was like flustered about that fact. So the more we talk about these things, the more it's all about consciousness, right? There's no one sitting here saying that we should design cars that are not safe for women. No one wants that. It's just we're not aware of it. So we need to start being aware of it and start talking about it more.
Yeah. So with all of these insights, Malin, how equal is the tech industry today?
That is a hard question, because the tech industry spans worldwide, and of course it's hard to paint with a wide brush and say that the entire industry is one thing. I would say that the world today isn't equal, and the tech industry is doing a little bit worse. And the tech industry actually has to do a little bit better. The tech industry is so important since we are designing how people communicate, how they shop. So many things in life is now influenced by technology. You can't opt out of technology anymore. You don't have that option. So it's important that technology actually is more equal than the rest of the world, because it has such a huge impact. And I like the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that is super true when it comes to the tech industry.
And you talked about risks in examples, the examples that you took us through in your answer just a couple of minutes ago. But I would also like, I know that you sometimes compare tech with people practicing medicine. And I'd like to ask you the risks of the unequal tech industry. What are they, and how would you describe them?
I would say that a lot of when you look at these examples that I gave earlier about the software recognition and all of those that we were constantly bombarded with, they're not random. They are diverse in their nature, but they're not random. They all replicate historical structures of marginalization. So what we're basically doing is that we're coding in all of our biases and all of our inequalities into larger systems that at the end we won't be able to control. And a lot of people say that equality will be fixed once everything is run by a computer. But because computers don't have bias, but computers have the bias that we put in there. And we also, even if you don't have any bias in the code, you have bias in the data set, because the data set is based on the reality of today, and the reality of today isn't equal. So I would say that the risks are huge. You can see from the coded bias example, I mean, you had an AI in the States that was actually supposed to help legislators to know when people would be out on parole after they committed a crime. And only after using it for quite a long time, they realized that it was giving longer sentences to Black people. That is super scary. You have the Apple credit system. I mean, Apple has so much resources, and they released their credit system, and they realized that it was giving more credit to men over women that had a better credit score. So if you just think about all the areas in life today that is kind of governed by technology, and then you realize that okay, if Apple didn't get it right, how are all these other companies getting it right? And then you realize that they probably haven't thought about it. And that keeps me up at night. It's to me, that is quite terrifying.
And you talk about this oath that people practicing medicine take, and that could be copied into tech. Could you take us through that?
Yeah, so people practicing medicine, they take this Hippocratic oath. And why they do this? So this is for anyone practicing medicine all over the world. They take an oath, like a set of ethics, a set of vows. And they do that because they have influence over people's lives, and they're also intervening in very complex systems that they can't be sure of the outcome. So that's why they decided to have an Hippocratic oath, which everyone needs to adhere to. But if you just look at those categories, those descriptions, I mean, interfering in influence over people's lives, interfering in complex systems that you don't really know the outcome of, all of that are really, you can be talking about the tech industry as well, especially now with the revolutions in biotechnology and information technology. There's going to be a lot of hard decisions to be made, and we're not going to be able to vote about them. They're going to be made by talented engineers or talented entrepreneurs that, I mean, they may have the best intentions, but they've only gotten that power due to being really good at this specific field. They haven't been elected. They're not representing anything but themselves. We didn't vote about the internet, but here the internet is, and we all have to live with it. And I would say that's a good thing. But what if sometimes the decision is made that isn't a good one? I mean, we will soon be on the cusp of like bioengineering life itself. And someone is going to have to make that decision on how to deal with that. And if that room is filled with only white men, that's going to be a bit terrifying for me, honestly.
Yeah. And there seems to be so many complex problems and issues in connection to this. And what would you say is the most significant obstacle for females in the tech industry today? And is it even possible to boil it down to one single problem?
I would say that it isn't possible, but I will still try. So one thing that I definitely feel is, if not the largest, then a super huge obstacle, is the difference between behavior and perception. So we know from countless of studies that when men and women behave exactly the same, they are perceived differently. And that is something really rough to understand as a woman, because you feel very powerless. So even if I act exactly the same as my male coworkers, I will not be perceived in the same way. We know that when women are assertive, we are perceived as being bossy. And this goes to the tech industry and to life itself, that it's really hard to kind of carve out your space in this industry when even if you act exactly the way you're supposed to act, people won't perceive you that way just because you're a woman. So I would say that it's a huge obstacle.
And I just want to follow up on this. We have a great question. We get questions from our audiences as well. And to you guys, just keep sending them in. We'll lift them up as much as we can, and the team at Oddwork send them to us. But one question we got here is, where do you see good examples of companies actively trying to create a more equal tech industry?
I think that companies that are actively employing a diverse set of perspectives. So I'm a gender studies major to begin with. So my career path into venture capital and technology wasn't definitely not a clear one. But now when you think about like self-driving cars and stuff like that, we need to employ philosophers, we need to employ gender studies majors, and it's hard for me to say specific companies because I don't want to call anyone out in that sense, but I think any company that is looking to, okay, we're going to build this technology, but we don't just need techie people, we need all these different perspectives in the room to kind of create the best technologies. I think those are the ones that are doing well.
Thank you. And okay, so we'll spend some time understanding the context of the problem with some very clear examples and the risks and the problem itself. And it is hard to boil it down to one single problem. And for myself personally, I work as a CEO for Oddwork. I'm a man in a position that I can make those changes, or I can influence our partners into these kind of discussions as well. And the problem is explained in a very clear way. But what I would need also is hands-on advice. So what should I do? And I know that our audience asked for this in the employer branding talk as well. So I'll just send out the question right over to you. What should we do?
Yeah, I love this question. And I think it's the first thing that I always say to companies when they wanna start their quality work is that I really have the management team sit down and say out loud even that this company is not a meritocracy and I am not gender blind. And this comes super hard. I know I work with entrepreneurs, so you've built this business of yours from the ground up, and of course it's super hard to accept that your business wouldn't be fair for all. But I want to take kind of the edge of that and say that everyone has biases. I have biases that everyone has. It's a part of growing up in society. It's a cultural phenomenon that none of us are exempt from. And studies actually show that believing yourself to be unbiased correlates with showing more bias in your decision making. So the first thing you need to do is understand that you, as everyone else, has biases, and your company isn't a meritocracy. And why this is important, this is not just to shame someone or to make them feel bad in the start of this work. It's because if you don't understand that you're not a meritocracy right now, then why would you change anything? If you are a meritocracy and you don't see gender, if you are that perfect company and that perfect person, why would you change anything, right? But you aren't, because that's not how society looks today. So accepting that you actually have biases is the first step in starting to implement strategies to not let that bias affect your business decision making. Because if you know that I'm biased, I need to do something in order to safeguard that when I make decisions, I'm not letting my biases influence those. So that is the first thing you really need to do and not be afraid of, basically. And the second part is a very concrete one, to formalize hiring and promoting criteria. Why this? Well, there's a lot of studies showing that we tend to justify our biased decision-making post hoc. So they did a study at Harvard where they basically had two candidates, one male and one female. And they let recruiters look at the different profiles. And in the beginning, they would choose the men, and they would say that this is because the man had more real-life work experience, even though the woman had a higher education. So they would choose the man and say it was because of that. And then when they switched the genders, they would still choose the man, but then they would say, well, it's because we value higher education over work experience. So we tend to make biased decision making. We tend to go with our gut feeling, and then after the fact, we justify it. But if you have very clearly defined before you start hiring, or when you are looking to promote staff, that this is what we prioritize. We prioritize higher education over work experience. We prioritize this. We're looking for exactly this candidate, and these are the criteria that we value here. Whether that's for hiring or for promoting, because then it makes it super hard for you to go with your gut feeling and then come back and justify it in hindsight. So that would be a super, super clear tip, to sit down and actually do that beforehand.
And that is a very good advice for all our HR friends and colleagues and experienced professionals in this room as well. And also to set that in context with biases and this whole subject when explaining to the manager that is conducting a recruitment process, whatever it might be, to set it in this context. So thank you for a very, very concrete advice. I know you have a couple of more, so I'll let you get to them.
Yeah, I also would implore anyone who hasn't done that yet to implement a reverse mentoring program. I love that because it gives new employees and underrepresented employees some face time with management, but it's also to be super clear, it's not just a fika with management, because that doesn't erase any of the power dynamics. It has to be really framed as a reverse mentoring program where the woman, the young woman, the new recruit is there to teach management something, and management is there to learn. That is super important. Otherwise, it doesn't really challenge any of the current power structures. And I think any manager should want to know how it is to be a young woman at their business. If you don't care about that, then I don't feel like you're passionate about actually creating an equal workplace. So implement that. It's super fun. Also, I've been a part of it on both ends, and I think that any truly passionate leader of a business should want to know the most of any of their employees' experiences working there.
That's really interesting.
Yes. And then the...
you know, sorry, Malin, I just wanted to ask you, do you have any examples of companies who have done this successful? I'm really curious.
I do have, but I'm not sure I'm at liberty to say. Like I have actually some of a few big recruitment or IT consultancy firms here in Gothenburg, I know, have actually asked me to mentor some of their management, even though I don't work there. So it's not really the same thing, but I'm not sure I'm at liberty to say, but I would, there are people doing it. And in my experience, they've all really enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. And then I have like I had to boil it down into one point, but there's a lot in this point. So you really need to implement some hard policies. And that goes for everything. But the main part I would say is to, wherever you have decisions being made in your organization, it may be in your management group, it may be in your recruitment group, wherever you make decisions, you should prioritize a diverse set of perspectives, not just when it comes to gender, but overall, because you need to, if you have very homogeneous groups, you will not, it's really hard to build a good foundation for quality work if you don't have it in your decision-making organs in your business, basically. I would also say to anyone looking to recruit to always to demand at least one female and one male final candidate. I mean, women are half of the population, so it's not like it should be that such a hard stretch to find good women for the position. And honestly, when I see all male boards, or I see all male management teams, or all male applicants for a job, I'm not confident that is the best of the best, because statistically, just mathematically, the randomly enough, the best 5 would be all male is very low. So statistically, I would say you haven't done the work to find me the best applicants, basically, because I don't really believe this result. So I would have that as a hard policy. I would also implement interview watchers. That is a great thing to kind of counteract the confirmation bias that so many studies have shown us that we do have. We tend to like people who are like us, and that kind of influences a lot of our business decision making. So having someone watch the interview, so you have the same thing, you have the interviewee, you have the interviewer, but you just have someone else is watching and kind of can give you the feedback in hindsight, like, okay, but why did you actually like this candidate? I didn't feel the same thing. And like having someone there to kind of, counteract any bias that you might show in the selection process. And one thing that is super, super important for everyone to understand is that company culture isn't set by what you say you want. It's not set by we want to have a diverse company, we want to have a fair company. It's set by what you allow. So what you allow in your company is what sets the culture. And we do know from all the studies now that women, when it comes to retaining female talent, women don't leave because they don't like tech jobs. They leave because they don't like tech work environments. And that is set by company culture. And I think that is one thing that I will scream about until I'm like hoarse, that women tech talent isn't a pipeline problem. It's not a problem to of course, we should continue to encourage women to take up tech jobs. But the big problem is that the tech industry is bleeding tech talent. Women are leaving this industry. But we don't really want to talk about it in that sense, because A, it's harder. It's easier to just say we need to get more girls interested in code. And B, it's more uncomfortable to say that, okay, it's something we're doing wrong here. Women are leaving. It's on us. It's easier to put it on the women to be like, hey, you need to be more interested in this. You need to choose this field. But women are leaving, and they are not choosing tech. They're dismissing tech not because of tech itself, but for the work environment. So in every company that has trouble recruiting women, I would say usually they come to me and they're like, there aren't no women, there isn't any women in tech. I don't know how to do this. And I would say there are a lot, like in Women in Tech Gothenburg, we have 900 members. They just don't want to work at your company. Why is that? And that's so much harder. It's more easy to say there's no women in tech, but it's much harder to say that they don't actually want to work here. Why is that? So that is like a hard lesson, but possibly the most important one.
And we have a couple of follow-up questions on that from the audience as well. It's raining in questions from the audience. I will use a little slot of our time to get to a couple of them. However, I know you have one final very concrete advice as well. So let's take a look at that before doing so.
Yeah, start conducting exit interviews. I think that even when you're talking about anything, not just equality, you should always do exit interviews, but especially if you want to improve your equality work, because when women leave, you want to understand why. A lot of people just you don't want to, you don't want to deal with it. So talk to them, understand why they're leaving your business, and actually make something of it. Don't just do that and kind of take all their lived experience and do nothing with it. Understand why women don't want to work here, why they're leaving your business, and actually do something about it. So it should be in everyone's best interest to definitely conduct exit interviews, especially with women leaving. But if you have the time, do it with everyone, I'd say.
And we do want to ask our audience, we have over 220 guests at this very point, and we would like to ask you guys, do you conduct exit interviews? And we do have a follow-up question on that for you as well, Malin, but just to see, get a sense of the room. And we have over 40 answers in, 92% actually doing so, going down a little bit with over 90 answers in right now. And our follow-up question, yeah, it's great to hear. 82% answer yes, they do conduct exit interviews. But our follow-up question to you, Malin, so when you conduct exit interviews, what is the follow-up work on that? How is that followed up after conducting the exit interview? What are your advice on that?
Well, that completely depends on what is brought forth in the exit interview. One thing that is super important, I would say, is that if you do actually, like, talking about workplace culture and feeling left out or feeling like, or dealing with sexism and these things, they are tough. They are very personal, and they can really gnaw at you. So if you do actually get a woman to open up and tell you about these things, it's your goddamn responsibility to do something about it. You can't just request that kind of emotional labor from the women to kind of share these things if you're not willing to actually take hard actions. So I would say that as long as you go into it with the sincere determination to actually listen and do something about it, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Just don't go in there and take it lightly, what they say, and take the actual emotional toll it can take on them to share with you lightly. Then you'll be fine.
Thank you very much, Malin. Well, let's jump into some questions. We have a lot. I have a team at Oddwork trying to select a couple and a few, but that's not easy. I have too many good questions here. But let's start with one in regards to interview watchers from Malin. Regarding interview watchers, do you mean to interviewers, or more like to do at Amazon, having a co-interviewer from another department, like complete objective third party?
I would say if you do have the resources to have a completely objective third party that is an interview observer, so not just two interviewers, but you have the people doing the interview, and then you have someone observing that person doing the interview. If you don't have that possibility, I mean, I work with a lot of startups and scale-ups. Of course, it's hard to always have a third-hand party come in, and just have someone else from your team be a watcher, and that knowing that they are not there to assess the potential recruit. They are there to assess the interviewer. that also puts a different power dynamic into the room. And I think doing that, it's much more powerful than having two interviewers, because then both of them are there with the perspective of assessing the interviewee, the recruit, not there to assess the interview process, basically.
That is a really, really interesting point. I'll jump to another question, a great question from Arina. Do you find it fair to prioritize a female candidate over a male candidate with similar merits in order to diversify your workplace?
Yes, that's a short answer, but of course I'm going to explain, because that might sound a bit controversial. But one of the best takes on this that I've actually heard is from a mentor of mine who runs Brooklyn VC in New York. And why I reached out to him to be my mentor was basically for this take that he had in a podcast. And he was talking about recruiting for boards and startup boards. And he said that it is so valuable to have one older white man who has done a startup journey and worked in finance. It's so valuable. It's invaluable to have that on a board, but you only need one. And if you have two candidates that have the similar merits, but one of them is going to not complement the group you have already in the same way, then I think it's definitely fair to choose the one that's going to make sure that the sammansättning, the completeness of your team is better. Because diversity is better. We know from so many studies that diversity breeds innovation. And I mean, in the way that the business climate is going today, you need to be super innovative no matter what industry you're in, because it's super fast paced and ever changing. So yes, I think it's fair, because you're not doing it because, oh, we want a woman in the room. You're doing it because you're looking at the holistic view of your team, and you're saying, okay, what is going to make this team better? What does this team need? And then, yeah, I definitely think it's fair.
And I will take one, maybe two more questions if we have the time. But I have one question that I will keep anonymous. But one of our guests is writing, I actually had a female, very famous business leader as my boss, and I heard her talk about potential promotion where a female colleague of mine was proposed. The leader answered that she had small children and therefore was not appropriate for the role, international role. If also female senior leaders think this way, how can we ever overcome the inequality between male and female in small and large enterprises?
And that makes me so upset to hear still. I mean, I hear a lot of these stories talking about these things, but it still gets me upset. This definitely isn't just a male problem. Of course, these kind of structures are being replicated and lamented by female leaders as well. And it's super hard. And it kind of brings to the point where if we wanted equality, we would have it. We often talk about everyone wanting equality, and I rarely have these discussions and someone says, I don't want equality. But if we all wanted it, we would have it. There's no natural force stopping us from having an equal society. It's because we are actively upholding these kind of structures. And that is because some people benefit from it. Definitely. For every more competent woman being looked over for a job, there's a less competent man getting it. So there are people that this system is advantageous to them, so there's no incentive for them to change it. But also I can see with some businesswomen being that, okay, I've made it. I've put on my sharp shoulders, and now everyone has to fight in the same way that I had. I do see that going away more and more. I mean, I've definitely never felt that kind of competition with my fellow female colleagues, industry colleagues. So I feel like that's going away more and more. But yeah, it's not a male issue. It's this is being replicated by a lot of people of all genders, basically. And it is rough to try to change it. And it's not until we realize that not everyone wants to change it that we can kind of begin, okay, but how can we change it anyway? Because now it's like everyone's agreeing, everyone wants equality, but it's still not happening, which kind of makes it a non-issue and getting us nowhere, basically.
And lastly, Malin, those are some insights that just makes you think. But lastly, your short answer to what should the result of an equal in the tech industry be?
A lot more innovation. We definitely see that diverse teams are more innovative, and also going to be some discomfort, I would say, because there is a reason why things are the way they are, because it's easy, it's hard to rock the boat. And also why diverse teams are so innovative is because they do have this kind of level of discomfort where very homogeneous teams, they run like a well-oiled machine, which can be great, but not great for innovation, because you have no one be like, okay, maybe we should do this instead. So I think a more equal industry is going to be more challenging. It's definitely going to have higher demands, which is going to make it a little bit uncomfortable, but I think it's going to be worth it, because we're going to be producing so much better products and so much better tech services. So yeah, that would be my short answer. An uncomfortable but innovative industry.
Yeah. Thank you, Malin. Thank you for so many hands-on advice. Poyan, should we try to summarize it?
Yeah, and I get that honor to try to summarize this. I'll keep it to the top 5 advice. Very hands-on advice, Malin. Thank you for that. The first one being accept that you're not a meritocracy, and I've been training now for a couple of days to say that word correctly. I think I did somewhat fine, but accept the fact that you're not a meritocracy and that we all have biases. A very hands-on advice. Formalize hiring, the process, so that we do not sit on the other side of the hiring process and make up our arguments for our decision. Implement a reverse mentoring program, very interesting point to understand, to make management understand the perspectives. A very clear one, introducing the hard policies and conducting the exit interviews that we gladly saw that 80% of this room is doing already. Malin, thank you very much for joining us today. 45 minutes has flown by. It was, by all means, I would say that easily the most important employer branding talk conducted to date. And we are very thankful to you for joining us and for sharing your very important knowledge to us and to our guests. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. I feel like the time flew by. I was honestly a little bit nervous, but it was super fun. And I'm so excited about all the great questions. And if anyone wants to reach out to me afterwards, please do. I have a mental open door policy, so just hit me up with any questions you may have.
And we will also send out the summary of this talk in just a couple of hours, and we will also get back to you with the questions, with the answer to the questions that you guys sent in to us. Thank you, Malin. Finally, we are very glad to announce the date for the next Employer Branding Summit. You guys are more than welcome to join us on this 22nd of September for this invitational only event, and you will all receive a registration link together with the summary from today's talk on your email. Remember to sign up as soon as possible, as this is a limited seats event, of course free of charge, but it does require an invitation. At the summit on the 22nd of September, we are more than happy to welcome 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗏, Director Innovation and Commercial Partners from Microsoft, on the topic of the workplace of tomorrow. Anna Fredriksson, Chief Human Resource Officer at the blitzscaling company 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗏 with their international brand 𝗁𝗲𝗏, on the topic of cultures and values while in rapid scaling. And last but absolutely not least, 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗏 Freudenthal together with Johan Landeström from the Swedish Armed Forces on the topic of changing the employer brand from the outside and in. We look very much forward to see you guys at this summit, and we hope to see you all soon again.
That was all for the 3rd Employer Branding Talk, and we would like to say a big thank you to everyone who joined today. Thank you, Malin, and thank you to the Oddwork team who has been working behind the scenes to make everything run smoothly. See you soon again. Bye.
See you. Bye.